Fairy Tail Fights is a hack-and-slash action-adventure game developed by PlayLogic Game Factory and published by PlayLogic Entertainment for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC. This review is based on the Xbox 360 version. The story is that Little Red Riding Hood, Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, Snow White, and the Naked Emperor from The Emperor's New Clothes have all had their popularity stripped from them by the Little Tailor, and they have to do what they can to become popular again, because if they don't, they'll die. Oh, so this is YouTuber Simulator then. Now, you'll have to forgive me if I let the gloves slip off somewhere in this video because, oh my god, does this game suck! Oh boy, where do I even begin? The combat in this game is done almost entirely with the right stick. You tilt up to do an uppercut, down for a downward swing, and so on. There are certain combos that you can perform if you tilt the stick in a specific order, like up, down, right, or left, right, up, but the game never tells you what combos you can do. I had to experiment and find them on my own. Even then, they don't even feel like they're doing any more damage than just waggling the stick all over the place, which is how I played the majority of the game. It's like they tried to make a deep and complex combo system with the least amount of effort possible, and as a result, it still feels like generic mindless button mashing, or in this case, stick waggling, and that doesn't feel rewarding because there's no reason to consciously string together combos as it just doesn't make a difference in damage output, and if it does, it's way too subtle of a difference for me to even care. So what do you attack with? Well, there's a large variety of weapons, is what the game wants you to think. But the only things that differ between them is the amount of damage they do, and they're all signified by the number of stars next to their names, and the difference in damage output is just barely noticeable. There are 4 different types of weapons. There are melee weapons for close quarters combat, and yes, the game says that there are slice and blunt weapons, but they have no differences at all other than just how the enemies die, and that's why I'm grouping them both as one. There are guns and arrows, which are your ranged weapons, and I believe the guns do more damage. You know, you'd think that there would be stars next to those names saying so, since that's the case with melee weapons. Well, I only use them for glory kills, really, since they have piss-poor ammo count, and their damage output amounts to jack shit. There are also potions, which are probably the most interesting of the bunch, mechanics-wise. You can either toss them at enemies, or drink them yourself, and the effect differs depending on the kind of potion. For example, if you toss the love potion at an enemy, you'll stun them for a moment. You probably won't be able to capitalize on it though, because it also leaves a puddle behind, and if you step in it, you'll get stunned too. But if you drink the love potion, you'll completely regenerate your health, and you'll become invincible for a while. So yeah, some options are clearly better than others on this front. Lastly, there are wands, which are basically projectile versions of potions, nothing more really. You can only hold up to 2 weapons at a time, meaning that if you're low on health and come across a love potion but you're already holding 2 weapons, you have to toss one of them and risk accidentally throwing it off a cliff or into a place that makes it unattainable in general just to refill your health. Earlier I mentioned glory kills. What is it? Virtually useless. There's this meter that fills up as you land attacks. Once it's full, you can press a button to unleash glory kills, and the type depends on which weapon you're holding at the time, even if you're not holding a weapon at all. Melee glory kills can kill enemies in one hit, but they're so unreliable because sometimes the inputs I make won't register properly, making it possible for nothing to happen at all. Projectile glory kills fire off a flurry of bullets or arrows in whichever direction you're facing. Given how much damage enemies soak up anyway, this glory kill feels nigh useless as well, even if the 360 control sticks didn't have such wide dead zones. Wands and potions I didn't even bother with as I just stopped using glory kills altogether. It takes too long to fill up the meter, and it just doesn't do enough damage to warrant going through the trouble. During cutscenes, enemies can still attack you, and because control is taken from you during them, you could end up taking needless damage. Also, if you're moving in one direction towards a ledge and you try to go the other way before you fall off, a cutscene might trigger and you'll end up dying anyway. This is because of how slippery movement is. It's like they tried to add this momentum-based physics to it, but it just feels so loose. I find myself colliding into things that halt my movement, and sometimes it even causes me to die when I'm trying to keep my footing or when I'm close to a ledge. Speaking of which, the platforming is such a goddamn nightmare. Because of movement being so slippery, the camera being fixed, and the character shadow being non-existent, all contributing to a lack of depth perception, it's so hard to tell where you're jumping to, making it very likely that you'll just end up jumping down to a bottomless pit into your doom. Attacking propels you forward, so if you're fighting off enemies near ledges, it's possible to fall off and kill yourself if you're just trying to survive getting pummeled by the horde. And it's not like you can just attack in one direction and then immediately attack in another direction. Once you throw that initial attack, you're committed to that combo. The bosses don't fare any better. It's all just avoiding a series of attacks until they put themselves in a vulnerable position for you to wail on them until they recover and you get to do it all again. And they go on for fucking ever. My god, why do they need to be this long? Oh, and once you finally beat the boss, you have to do it again. Like, immediately afterwards. And it doesn't even really do anything different the second time, it's just the same fight again. This isn't a challenge, it's a waste of fucking time. Dying in this game has virtually no punishment whatsoever. You have infinite lives, you pick up right where you died, and the only things you drop are the weapon that you're currently holding and some of the treasure you collected. And this treasure is completely worthless. There are two things you can spend it on. First is during gameplay, where you occasionally come across a well that you can spend treasure on to get stuff. What kind of stuff? Weapons that are already plentifully littered throughout the game, so there's no point in spending treasure here. The second thing you can spend treasure on is a statue in the hub village to make it look prettier. Yep. That's it. No stat upgrades, no extra abilities, not even alternate outfits, just a statue that you're probably not even gonna look at for longer than a minute. There is nothing. Of course, that doesn't mean that dying isn't fucking annoying, especially considering that enemies take so much damage and take forever to kill. This is especially the case on the hardcore difficulty. There have been plenty of cases where I died, respawned, and then died again within 2 or even 1 second, and that is not an exaggeration. You have no invincibility frames after respawning. The highest number of times I've died on a single chapter was 86. Jesus! Now let me talk about the so-called secrets. Yeah, that's secrets in air quotes, because yeah, they suck too. The secret chests don't even really contain anything that isn't in other chests most of the time, so why even bother looking for them? And the only secrets that could have been worth half a damn are so ridiculously hard to find that it's virtually not even worth that. Probably the worst case of this is a secret weapon in Chapter 10 called the Invisible Sword. To get it, you have to go into a waterfall early on so that the camera shifts to a castle balcony showing you the treasure chest that holds it. Then you have to waddle around like a blind insect until you purposefully kill yourself and you'll respawn in front of that treasure chest. Yeah, a secret that you have to die to get. But it's not just that, it doesn't work right away. You see, there's another treasure chest located directly behind the waterfall itself. And of course the developers wouldn't be so dickish as to make one of them impossible to get, right? So, what triggers which treasure chest you get when you go through the waterfall? You have to keep jumping in and out of the waterfall until the game feels like you've suffered enough and triggers the camera view change. How the hell would you know how to do all of this? There are no hints anywhere in the entire game suggesting you could do this. How would you even know that the weapon even existed? And to add even more salt to the wound, there are achievements tied to getting this sword. And this isn't the only offense. There are other secrets where I never would have guessed were there had I not looked them up on the internet. In fact, here's another example. In Chapter 12, there's a chest where you have to fall off into what seems like a bottomless pit, only to find out that it's another platform that you can walk on that leads to a chest. Because of how easy it is to fall off of everything in the chapter, how would you know that this is the one spot you're supposed to do so? Oh yeah, and as for the achievements, they're fucking awful. There are achievements tied to beating the game on each of the 3 difficulties, and get this, they don't fucking stack. Even worse, there are achievements for beating the game on single player and multiplayer mode on each individual difficulty, meaning you have to beat this game a minimum of 6 times. 6 fucking times to get all of the achievements. And I don't just mean beat the final boss 6 times, I mean you have to beat every single chapter 6 times. Luckily, if a chapter has a conclusion, which is basically the boss part of the chapter, you only have to beat it for the achievements to unlock, because chapters 5 and 10 are so excruciatingly long, and I swear some of the level assets are even repeated. There's another achievement tied to using every single weapon in the game, but it doesn't keep track of which weapons you found, only the number of unique weapons. This is especially excruciating because there are specific weapons that can only be found in very specific spots in specific chapters, like the toad that can only be found in Chapter 9 at a very specific well that you might not even bother with. But the worst achievement, in my opinion, is the one where you have to open every single treasure chest in the entire game. There is no way to keep track of which ones you've opened, nor how many there are in each chapter. It only counts how many you've opened altogether. That means if you've opened all the chests in one chapter and then replay it and open them all again, it counts both times towards the total sum, so that's practically useless. But it's not just that. What makes this the worst achievement in the game is that you have to open every single chest in a chapter in a single run, and you have to finish the chapter. That means you can't just replay a chapter and skip the ones you've already opened just to get the ones you skipped and exit out afterwards. If you replay a chapter, you have to open them all again in one fell swoop. I cannot believe I actually had the patience to unlock this achievement because of how unforgivingly dull the game is. The only level in the entire game that I found even slightly tolerable is Chapter 11, where you're going up the Giant's Beanstalk. The level was just the right length, it's not filled to the fucking brim with enemies, and they're not fucking damage sponges. Why couldn't the game have more levels like this? Sure, the platforming still sucks, but at least I wasn't pulling my fucking hair out trying to stay on the stage and not fall on my doom because I wanted to defend myself from the hordes of enemies. The multiplayer arena is poorly done too. For example, drinking the ice potion kills the other players instantly, but you don't score for it. On the third arena chapter, if you open a treasure chest while the cloud platform is rising, the treasure that comes out can fall through the fucking floor and you can't get it. And sometimes when you hit a player off the stage, you won't always score for it because they collided with a wall or platform first. In fact, if the other player is low on health, they can just commit suicide and respawn with full health. They don't lose points for it, so why wouldn't they? Oh my god, this game was horrible. How the hell did this game get nominated for Best Console Game in 2009? What made these people think that this heaping pile of horseshoe wonder bat shit could stand toe-to-toe with the likes of Rocket Ride and Swords and Soldiers? Not even Disney Universe made me this angry, and that game sucks too! And I'm not talking about Cuphead anger, where you're more so angry at yourself for making a stupid decision. No, I'm talking about anger caused by garbage combat, slippery movement, leap of faith platforming, tedious length, etc. I can only recommend this game to people who are morbidly fucking curious. This game fucking sucks. It's so fucking suck it fucks. And I feel no guilt for A, stealing a joke from someone more popular than me, and B, giving Fairy Tail Fights a 1 out of 10. I'm the Negative Ion. Fuck this game. The graphics are disgusting too. Oh, and the music? What music?